Founders are the crazy ones who take the risk against all odds of success to create something from nothing. Starting, however, is the easy part. Once you're in, you need to make the company grow. And as a founder, you're in the particular situation that you are the company. If you don't grow, the company won't grow. In other words, you gave birth to the company, but you might also kill it. Today's talk is about growing as a founder, but it's also about personal growth. So even if you are not a founder yet or don't plan even to become a founder, it is about personal growth. And with this, I want to welcome to my talk. I'm Marcel Poelker, and I want to briefly introduce you to what I've done so far. I studied computer science in the beautiful town of Lübeck. For the ones who know a bit about Germany, that's the Marzipan city. And I studied computer science there, achieved best in class for bachelor and master, and won a scholarship even. And why I tell you that, I'll tell you in a second. Afterwards, I joined the fintech Pay11, who later became sumUp, and I became the youngest management member of that company. To then afterwards realize why not doing it on my own, which is when I founded Taledo. And we digitalized recruiting through the combination of product, AI, and the human touch to give the users the best of all experience. To round it off, you might now ask, hey Marcel, why that picture on the back? I'm a passionate drummer, have been playing in many bands, so this is a personal note of mine as well. Now I'd like to come back to the point of where I started. This, in the end, is the visible side. You could even say it like success story. You could also, in my opinion, say that's more like the boring side, because what's really interesting is the challenges that each of these positions inherit. So let me come back to the universal times. Before I went to university, I was really bad at school. I was even so bad that once a teacher told me, after having a good grade, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. She said that with humor. I took it with humor, but it basically shows you the level that I was at. So challenges are basically in our lives, in every one of our lives, and it's about overcoming them. I believe that the results in our lives are directly related to our personal growth. I think that's super important, so I'll repeat it. This, by the way, is one of the few slides with words. The results in our lives are directly related to our personal growth. So it's really about growing in life. So if it's so important, then who's responsible? There are many people in our lives. Our parents, our colleagues, friends, we have our networks, and there's even things like books, YouTube, podcasts, so there's many people of influence in the end. But the only person who is responsible is ourselves. So if it's important and we are responsible, what's in our way then? Unfortunately, it's not about the pets. Yeah? It's also ourselves. If you think about it, we're responsible, but we are also oftentimes in our ways. I want to now zoom a bit into the position of a founder. So what is particular about the position of a founder? We are in a position of leverage. Leverage I translate as responsibility. We give a promise to our employees, to our clients, to our investors, to the group of communities that we move into, and if you think about it, even on a larger scale, to society. To live up to that promise, we need to give our personal best. This means we need to grow, we need to work on ourselves. Second of all, we are facing constant challenges. So typically, as a founder, these tend to be even existential. In the beginning, before you start a company, you need to create the reason of existence first. Once you're in, the question of funding, the strategy of funding and also getting the next funds, this is an existential question that you have all around. It's a constant companion. So what happens if your strategy doesn't work? What happens if the funds get low? What happens if you have a promised fund and it gets delayed? Which is a true story, unfortunately. In the times of Corona, the government promised funds, and you think, okay, government, this is really secure. But they were very grateful in giving these funds, but they were very inefficient in rolling them out, unfortunately, which caused various degrees of problems, even existential crises to some companies. So you face all this question of funds. In addition, hiring is one of the most important. So hiring too fast results into problems. Hiring too slow, the same, is a problem. And hiring the wrong people, that's the biggest problem of them all. This is, by the way, the reason for existence for Taledo, hiring the right talent. Besides that, I could go through many different areas. Pricing is an art in itself, product, finding the right KPIs, when do you have product market fit, how long do you persist staying in this direction, when is time to pivot, operational questions like culture, processes, how to scale this whole thing, at what phase of the company is what the right procedure, and all the things. Another one might be, for example, expansion versus focus, what's the right timing for these things. So all of these questions have really high impact on the company, and you're typically at the point of decision. And I raise these questions here not to give answers to these questions, but mainly to give you the picture of what is it like to be a founder. And I want to emphasize that, of course, besides this visible side, there's also the personal side. So in the beginning of a founder's life, you need to be fine with a bank account going down. That might be hard for you mentally. Second of all, and this is more important, besides all these difficulties that you face, when you come home to your loved ones, you should better not bring all the stress home. So it is a stressful environment, and last but not least, we tend to be alone in that situation. This doesn't mean that we have no people around you. It's the opposite, actually. Like, we're on constant demand. So many people want something from you all the time, but people typically can't relate to you. I've had the chance to meet various degree of very successful people, and I made the observation that even the most successful people in corporate management, for example, they are not the same. They don't have the same mindset as a founder. And I don't mean this to say any is better or worse. It's just a different approach to things, a different way of thinking in the end. So people can't typically relate to. The second thing is, within your company, you also are a bit alone if you think about it, because you carry this label founder. So founder basically means that people might have, typically have a lot of respect or are afraid to meet you even, and so they might not tell you the truth. They might not point out your weaknesses, for example. So you need to actively work for an environment of trust. And this environment of trust, even if you manage to establish that, might not work, because in the end you carry the label founder. Yeah. And let's come back to the question what I asked in the beginning, like, we create something from nothing, so we are pioneers. So typically there are not many people that basically give you a direction. So let's compare this with someone who is a no-founder position and has a lot of degree of freedom. So typically the boss would say, go in that direction. Yeah, somewhere in that direction. It doesn't matter how you reach your goal, but it's this direction. As a founder, no one tells you anything. Like, you can go north, south, east, west. You can jump around. You can grave a tunnel. Like, there's so much freedom. No one tells you, and probably no one can tell you the answers even, because it's your chart, it's your position, basically. So it's a position of responsibility. It's a position that other people typically can't relate to, and because of that, you tend to be alone. And thirdly, you're basically alone and need to lead the company into success. So in this position, what's important to realize? Sour truth first. It sucks to realize, but we need to realize it's ourselves. That's not for founders, but in general, if you want to grow, start with yourself. It's a truth that is so important, and it might help to think about that we're all in the same boat. It's nothing bad to realize that, because we all underlie the same human conditions. It's just important to realize that, because if you don't realize it, then you will never grow. So it's the point of truth, basically, that's so important. The company, throughout the time frame, goes through many different phases. Day one is typically a very different company than, say, year 5. Everything, and believe me, everything changes in that time. Yeah, the company totally changes, the people change, the office might change, the product change, pricing change, strategy change, everything changes. The only thing that doesn't change, what's that? It's your title. The title of a founder stays the same. Day 1, year 5, you're the founder. Does your job change? You bet it does. It better will, because you need to realize you do a different job in the different phases of the company. The difficult part about that, however, is that you are in the company in the beginning, and you need to realize that you need to work outside of the company on the company. So you need to realize while you're in. That's the difficult part about it. So I talked a bit about different roles and different phases of company. And at this point, I want to highlight that mindset is not the same as skill set. So, different roles in the company require different skills. This is something you need to realize because you might not have the right skills to do the job. Strong mindset also doesn't mean strong skill set. Think about it, like the founder is the only person in the company who has not been hired. So it's the only person who has not been checked, interviewed, if he's qualified. It's a point of realization, right? So we need to be honest with ourselves, like, are we the right person in the beginning or throughout the company? Because if we don't realize this, then there is no chance of change. So it's just important that we realize that. Another point I want to highlight is some dynamics I observed in people. We tend to have two extreme inner voices. On the left, you see a very critical person. That's your inner voice who's critic about yourself. This goes along the line to say, like, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it, others are better, it's the wrong timing. You know it, like you hear the voice probably all the time, we all do. So this person brings us down. On the right-hand side, we see the other extreme, which is the protector. The protector is basically, if the left person is looking too close, the one on the right doesn't look close enough. Would say things like, I can do it better than anyone else. I'm the best. No one else can do it, in fact. Or if you talk about weaknesses, this person would say, it applies to everyone but me. And of course, that's not true. So what's good about these two guys? Yeah, we typically tend to be one of them. You can figure it out for yourself where you're more relating to. So the good thing about these guys is we need them both. I would not like to live without the critic, because the critic points out room for improvement. If a meeting doesn't go well, if a conversation is not good, this person might point to you, hey, did you really understand the other's position? Did you share the right information? Was the shared context given? All these questions are good because it leads you to reflection and eventually to improvement. So what's good about the right guy? The right guy is also good because if we have not this layer of protection, then we are not confident enough. And especially as a founder, but honestly, throughout life, like everyone, we need this confidence. We need a bit of confidence to just make up with life. So with all of these things that in the first place seem negative, I pointed out things that are also good. So at this point, it might sound a bit abstract. Yeah? To summarize, basically, we realized growing is important and we grow through challenges. The biggest challenge of them all is ourselves. The good thing is it's in our own hands, so we can actually change, but it needs to start with the awareness, with realization. So how to grow? It's difficult, but I want to give you something at hand that you might apply, which in my opinion works very well. It's a 4-step process and you can apply it every day. First step, identify the person that you want to be or that you need to be. Yeah, in a normal context it can be a great parent. In the business context it could be a great leader. Who's a great leader? Really live up to that. Who is a good leader? Second step is identify or honestly reflect on the gap between you and the person that you should be. This should be done with objectivity and distance. Because you need to take yourself out of this emotional equation, otherwise you're probably not honest to yourself. The third one is magic to me. We talked a lot about the difficulties of the mind, the odds are against us basically, and indirectly I've also said that it takes a lot of time, so it's really difficult to grow. But on the other hand, there's no reason why we couldn't change our behavior right now, why we couldn't think differently about us right now. Impersonate the person that you've identified in step 1 right now. Lastly, at this point, basically, it sounds easy, right? It's hard as well, but it is also so easy. The only thing that really matters in the end is that we need to do this with repetition. It is about the repetitions that matter more than the time. It's of course also the time, but really regularly living up to that person is the most important thing. And I want to give you an example here, for example, playing an instrument. You saw me playing an instrument in the beginning of the slides. Learning an instrument takes days and years of practice. Why should a mental change be any different? This doesn't mean that we should give up. It's great, we can change every day. Every meeting, every day, every minute, everything can be a practice if you think about it this way. It matters to move with intention. Frame your mindset with these 4 steps, and life becomes a practice basically and a playground if you want to do it this way. So I want to conclude with this fascinating journey about ourselves, in ourselves, is really worth it. There's a lot of things that we can learn about ourselves from ourselves. We need to confront fears on this journey. But this, in the end, will lead to growth. Thank you.
Marcel, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. As you mentioned earlier, founders tend to feel that almost no one can relate to them.
Yeah.
And that becomes especially hard when these people that cannot relate to them is friends and family, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you think a founder should handle this feeling of loneliness? And did it happen to you? Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, counterintuitively, sharing actually opens up. So I think sharing is important, and also in a leader position. So I talked about strong mindset today. We tend to also be like, overconfident or overcompensate certain weaknesses. So it's possibly seen that sharing is a weakness, but it's not. If you open up with people, you would be amazed to see what really happens, because what I said today, like I could talk to everyone in the room here. You know what I'm talking about here, right? So we all have this kind of like, history and stuff like that. So if you start sharing that, you have a really good conversation.
So communication is key.
Yeah, like I would say authenticity is key, trustworthiness is key, these things, no fakeness, Of course, like in business situations, you also need to like perform well in terms of pitching your idea and stuff like that, right? So it depends a bit on the context, of course, but I think you need to always stay authentic. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Marcel.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Please, another round of applause.
Thank you.